There comes a moment in every life when the weight of invisible battles presses harder than anything seen with the natural eye. A moment when the loudest struggle isn't happening around us, but within us. Many of us walk through life carrying a quiet curse, a shadow that whispers, "You're not enough. You'll never rise. Failure is your destiny." Yet today, in this very moment, something greater is calling you to break that lie at its root. The truth is this: the greatest wars are fought in the mind long before they show up in our circumstances. And while the world may label failure as a final destination, heaven calls it a temporary classroom. What you've survived, what you're still pushing through, what tried to bury you, none of it has the authority to define who you become next. You are standing here because purpose refused to let you quit. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a divine spark inside you that refuses to be extinguished. It may flicker under pressure, but it never dies. The very fact that you can still hope, still dream, still long for something more is evidence that you were created for victory, not defeat. That inner fire is the proof that God has already placed greatness within you, long before fear or failure ever tried to speak. And so today, we are not here to rehearse the past. We are here to break the patterns that try to imprison your mind. We are here to silence the curses spoken over you by others, by circumstances, and even by your own doubts. You are stepping into a moment where faith rises above fear, where truth cancels every lie, where the limit that once held you dissolve in the presence of divine possibility. Breaking internal narratives that create the illusion of failure is one of the most transformative battles any individual can face, because the mind is the birthplace of every belief, every decision, and every outcome you experience in life. Long before failure ever becomes visible in the physical world, it begins as a whisper, a seed, planted in the unseen soil of your thoughts. These internal narratives, often shaped by past wounds, disappointments, generational influences, or even environment that never supported growth, form quiet prisons that hold people captive without chains or walls. They are subtle, persistent, and convincing, and over time, they begin to sound like truth. When the mind accepts these inner narratives as reality, they shape identity, expectation, and the limits one assumes are unbreakable. But these narratives are not facts. They are illusions, illusions powerful enough to dictate the trajectory of an entire life if left unchallenged. These narratives form early, sometimes triggered by moments we barely remember, childhood mistakes, harsh criticism, being overlooked or underestimated, or repeatedly hearing that something is impossible. The mind stores these moments like recordings, replaying them whenever you attempt to rise beyond what you've known. They speak in moments of transition, telling you that you're unprepared, unworthy, or destined to repeat old cycles. They echo in moments of opportunity, insisting that someone else is better, more capable, more qualified. And because these narratives sound so familiar, they are often believed without question. The illusion of failure is not rooted in what you cannot do, but in what your mind has convinced you that you cannot become. These illusions become mental habits, patterns of thought that run automatically, shaping how you see yourself and how you interpret the world around you. When these internal narratives go unchallenged, they create a distorted lens. Through this lens, every setback seems catastrophic, every delay feels like rejection, and every challenge looks like confirmation that failure is inevitable. It becomes easy to forget that setbacks are temporary teachers, not permanent verdicts. These illusions whisper that your past defines your ceiling, that your weakness outweighs your potential, that the divine purpose placed within you is somehow out of reach. They overshadow your confidence, drain your courage, and silence your spiritual authority. Yet, what remains hidden beneath these narratives is your true identity, a resilient, creative, purpose-filled, being capable of far more than the stories you've been rehearsing. Breaking these internal narratives requires awareness. Awareness is the first spark that brings light into the dark corners of the mind. When you begin to observe your thoughts instead of automatically accepting them, you gain power. You begin asking, who told me this? Why do I believe this? Is this voice rooted in truth or in fear? You start noticing patterns, how your mind reacts when you dream bigger, how it resists when you attempt to grow, how it resurrects old doubts whenever you stand on the edge of transformation. Awareness doesn't silence the narrative immediately, but it reveals the illusion behind it. You begin to recognize that the voice of fear and the whisper of failure are not spiritual truths, but old echoes pretending to be reality. Once you are aware of these narratives, the next step is challenging them. Challenging them means questioning the authority you have unconsciously given them. For years, these thoughts may have acted as dictators, but they are not rulers unless you allow them to be. Challenging them means refusing to let these thoughts make decisions for you. You confront them with truth about who you are, truth about what you've survived, truth about the resilience that has carried you through storms you thought would break you. You confront them with the understanding that failure is not a final identity, but fleeting experience, and every experience can be reshaped, redeemed, and redirected. You challenge them by aligning your thoughts with a higher perspective, one rooted in purpose rather than fear. As you challenge these narratives, you begin rewriting them. Rewriting is not about ignoring the past, but about reframing the meaning you have attached to it. It's about understanding that your past struggles were not signs of your inability, but training grounds for your rising. Rewriting your narratives means intentionally choosing thoughts that honor your calling, your growth, and your divine potential. It means speaking life into every area where death once seemed final. It means replacing phrases like I can't with I am becoming, replacing I always fail with I am learning, replacing I am not enough with I am equipped and empowered. Rewriting your narrative doesn't happen in one moment. It happens through consistent, intentional redirection of the mind. As your internal narrative shifts, everything around you begins to shift. You begin to see opportunities instead of obstacles. You begin to interpret challenges as preparation rather than punishment. Your confidence rises not because circumstances have changed, but because your inner world has aligned with truth. You stop filtering your decisions through the lens of fear and start making choices based on faith, possibility, and divine identity. The illusion of failure loses its power because illusions cannot survive where truth is consistently spoken and believed. Breaking these internal narratives also requires acknowledging that some thoughts did not originate with you. Many were inherited, spoken by parents, teachers, authority figures, or environments that did not understand your destiny. Some were shaped by culture, by trauma, by repeated disappointments, and some were spiritual attacks designed to keep you from recognizing your full potential. But just because a thought feels familiar doesn't mean it belongs to you. You have the authority to reject any thought that does not align with your purpose. You are not obligated to accept fear-based narratives simply because they have existed in your mind for a long time. Familiarity is not truth. Familiarity is not destiny. Familiarity is not who you are. Breaking the illusion of failure also involves understanding the spiritual dimension of thought. Thoughts are seeds, and seeds produce after their own kind. If you continually sow fear, you reap limitation. If you sow doubt, you reap hesitation. If you sow inadequacy, you reap stagnation. But if you sow faith, courage, vision, perseverance, and truth, the mind begins producing a harvest aligned with your calling. The mind becomes fertile ground for breakthrough, not bondage. The narratives you nurture determine the future you step into. As you rewrite these internal narratives, you also begin reclaiming your voice. You start speaking life into places where silence once kept you trapped. You begin affirming your identity, your purpose, your resilience. This is not empty positivity. It is spiritual alignment. It is choosing truth over illusion. It is choosing destiny over doubt. The more you choose truth, the weaker the illusion becomes. The more you honor the strength within you, the more courage rises. The more you align your thoughts with the divine purpose over your life, the more the illusion of failure dissolves into nothing. And as these internal narratives break, something powerful happens. You begin to see yourself as heaven sees you. You begin to recognize the greatness placed within you long before fear ever tried to speak. You begin to walk with clarity, with boldness, with a renewed mind capable of creating, building, rising, and conquering challenges that once felt impossible. Because the illusion of failure was never a reflection of your potential. It was only a reflection of a narrative that was never meant to be yours. Replacing fear-driven thought with faith-centered truth is a transformative shift that begins deep within the landscape of the mind, where every belief about who you are and what you can become is formed. Fear-driven thoughts are subtle, persuasive, and often disguised as logic or caution. They appear reasonable, even protective, but their ultimate purpose is to shrink your vision, weaken your confidence, and disconnect you from the identity and purpose divinely placed within you. Fear speaks in a voice that sounds familiar because it draws from past experiences, past disappointments, and past versions of yourself that you have already outgrown. It uses the memory of what once hurt you to convince you that stepping forward will only bring more pain. It uses the uncertainties of the future to fabricate outcomes that steal your courage before you ever take a step. Fear-driven thoughts do not simply create emotional discomfort. They shape an entire worldview that limits your ability to see possibility, progress, and divine potential. Faith-centered truth, on the other hand, is not built on circumstance or history, but on identity, promise, and purpose. It does not deny difficulty or pretend challenges don't exist. Instead, it injects strength into your perspective and empowers you to stand firm even when everything around you seems uncertain. Faith-centered truth anchors you to something deeper and stronger than fear. It aligns your mind with what is possible rather than what is threatening. It places your focus on what has been planted within you rather than what is happening around you. And when these truths begin to take root, they dismantle the lies that fear has embedded into your thinking over time. The process of replacing fear-driven thoughts begins with recognizing them. Fear often hides beneath thoughts that appear practical. What if I fail? What if I'm not capable enough? What if I'm not ready? What if things go wrong? What if I'm rejected? These questions, although common, create mental scenarios that drain energy, distort reality, and keep you locked in hesitation. Fear's strength is not that it is true, its strength is that it is repeated. Thoughts repeated become beliefs, and beliefs shape behavior. So when fear-driven thoughts repeat over days, months, or years, they form mental pathways that feel automatic. But the presence of fear-driven thoughts does not mean they deserve authority. It means they require replacement. Faith-centered truth enters as a corrective force. Truth interrupts fear by presenting a higher perspective, one rooted not in your limitations, but in your divine design. Truth speaks differently. You are equipped. You are not alone. You have purpose. You are capable of overcoming. You were created with intention. Growth is possible. Strength is in you. What is ahead is greater than what is behind. These truths do not simply offer encouragement. They rewire the mind one thought at a time. They begin shifting internal patterns that have been conditioned by fear. As truth is spoken repeatedly with intention and consistency, the mind gradually aligns with a new reality, one where faith becomes louder than fear. Replacing fear-driven thoughts with faith-centered truth also requires the discipline of intentional focus. The mind naturally gravitates toward what is familiar, and fear often feels familiar because it has lived in your thoughts for so long. It may feel easier to believe fear than to embrace truth, especially when truth demands growth, courage, and trust. But faith is strengthened through repetition. Each time you redirect your thinking, you are training your mind to adopt a new default response. You are teaching yourself to choose hope over dread, possibility over limitation, and divine assurance over human uncertainty. This is not an instant transformation. It is a daily practice, a spiritual discipline that reshapes your inner world. As faith-centered truth becomes the foundation of your thinking, fear begins to lose its influence. Fear-driven thoughts rely on emotional attachment, old wounds, past failures, insecurities, and unresolved pain. But truth introduces a new attachment, one rooted in purpose, identity, and conviction. When the mind begins to hold on to these truths, the emotional power of fear breaks down. You start noticing that situations which once triggered panic or self-doubt no longer hold the same weight. Thoughts that used to spiral into worst-case scenarios now meet resistance. Your mind begins to push back. When fear says, you can't, truth responds, you already survived more than this. When fear says, you're not enough, truth answers, you are created with intention and equipped with strength. When fear says, what if it goes wrong? Truth counters, what if it goes right? Faith-centered truth shifts the conversation happening within you. Replacing fear-driven thoughts with truth also transforms your emotional state. Emotions follow thoughts, they do not lead them. When thoughts change, emotional patterns change as well. Fear produces anxiety, hesitation, insecurity, and paralysis. Truth produces confidence, peace, clarity, and boldness as truth becomes more deeply rooted. Your emotional environment becomes healthier and more stable. You begin to carry yourself differently. You speak differently. You respond to challenges with more resilience. You take risks you once avoided. You pursue opportunities with a renewed sense of certainty. This internal shift becomes visible in your actions, decisions, and energy. An important part of this transformation involves letting go of the fear of failure. Fear often exaggerates the consequences of failure, making you believe that one setback will define your entire identity. But faith-centered truth reframes failure as information, not condemnation. It allows you to see mistakes as stepping stones rather than tombstones. It removes the shame associated with imperfection and reminds you that growth requires progress, not perfection. Truth teaches you that every attempt shapes you, strengthens you, and prepares you for what's ahead. When fear no longer controls your interpretation of failure, you gain freedom to move, try, build, create, and pursue without the burden of imagined catastrophe. Replacing fear with truth also calls you to silence internal voices that don't reflect your divine identity. These voices may come from past criticism, societal expectations, comparisons, or people who could not see your potential. Fear uses these voices to validate its lies. But truth reminds you that your identity is not determined by external opinions. Your worth is not measured by others' limitations. Your potential is not restricted by human judgment. When truth becomes the lens through which you see yourself, your confidence grows not from ego, but from alignment with who you were created to be. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You no longer fear stepping into new territory. You no longer allow external noise to influence your internal narrative. Another powerful aspect of replacing fear-driven thoughts with faith-centered truth is the role of imagination. Fear misuses imagination to create future disasters. Truth redeems imagination to visualize possibility and purpose. When your imagination aligns with truth, you begin to see yourself achieving what once felt impossible. You begin to envision outcomes that inspire you rather than intimidate you. You begin to imagine life through the lens of destiny instead of defeat. Imagination becomes a tool for faith rather than fear, shaping your inspiration and motivation. As truth becomes the dominant force in your thinking, your choices begin to reflect that shift. You begin to pursue opportunities you once avoided. You begin to speak words of life rather than limitation. You begin to surround yourself with environments that reinforce truth rather than amplify fear. You begin to recognize and reject thoughts that do not align with your purpose. This is how transformation becomes lasting, when truth is not just acknowledged, but lived, practiced, and embodied. Over time, the replacement of fear-driven thoughts with faith-centered truth creates a mental foundation that is strong, stable, and deeply rooted. A foundation that does not crumble under pressure. A foundation that can withstand uncertainty. A foundation that supports growth, boldness, and resilience. A foundation that empowers you to rise into the fullness of your calling, guided not by fear, but by truth, possibility, and divine alignment, recognizing divine purpose as stronger than past setbacks. Begins with the understanding that your life is not a random sequence of events, but a carefully woven journey shaped by intention, meaning, and destiny. Every person carries within them a unique purpose and assignment that was placed in their spirit long before challenges, disappointments, or failures ever had a chance to speak. Yet, many people allow the weight of their past to cloud their sense of direction. They look at old mistakes and assume those moments have stripped them of potential. They revisit painful seasons and conclude that those experiences disqualified them. But divine purpose is not fragile. It does not break under pressure. It does not shrink under adversity. It does not disappear because of detours or delays. Purpose is stronger, deeper, and more enduring than any setback life can present. Past setbacks often echo loudly because they are tied to emotion, hurt, shame, regret, frustration. These emotions can create mental barriers that make it difficult to see yourself accurately. They cause you to define yourself by what went wrong rather than by who you were created to be. But purpose is not dictated by emotion. Purpose is anchored in the divine. Purpose sees beyond moments of difficulty and calls you toward what is possible, not what is familiar. To recognize purpose, you must separate your identity from your experiences. Your experiences shape you, but they were never designed to define you. The moment you begin to see the difference, a deep internal shift takes place. You start to realize that the parts of your story that felt like failure were often the very moments preparing you for growth, clarity, and strength. Divine purpose has a way of using everything: successes, losses, breakthroughs, and heartbreaks. Nothing is wasted. The places where you struggle become the places where you gain wisdom. The seasons where you felt lost become the seasons where you develop insight. The challenges you endured become the training ground for resilience, compassion, and spiritual authority. Purpose uses both the mountain and the valley. It uses both celebration and tears. It uses both open doors and closed ones. When you begin seeing setbacks through the lens of purpose, they no longer feel like punishments. They begin to look like preparation. Recognizing divine purpose also requires understanding that your calling is bigger than your past. You are evolving, growing, and becoming more of who you were created to be. Setbacks do not have the power to undo divine design. They may slow you down for a moment, but they cannot cancel what has been written over your life. Purpose is not fragile enough to be broken by mistakes. It is not intimidated by delays. It is not threatened by fear or doubt. Purpose remains constant, even when you feel inconsistent. Even in your weakest moments, purpose remains active, pulling you forward, reminding you that your life carries weight and meaning far beyond what your past attempts to suggest. To fully recognize purpose, you must learn to listen to the quiet pull within you, the persistent inner knowing that you were made for more than what you have been through. This inner pull is often strongest in the moments when you feel the most defeated. That is because purpose does not retreat when life becomes difficult. Purpose becomes louder. It calls you to rise even when circumstances tell you to remain stuck. It nudges you forward even when your environment seems to be holding you back. It reminds you that everything you've endured has equipped you with insight, strength, and depth that others may never understand. Purpose sees your potential even when your past tries to overshadow it. Setbacks become powerful when you misinterpret them. Many people assume that struggle indicates disqualification, but in truth, struggle often indicates growth. Struggle births strength that comfort cannot produce. Struggle reveals what is inside you. Struggle removes what is unnecessary and strengthens what is essential. When you begin viewing setbacks as moments of shaping rather than evidence of failure, your perspective changes. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What is this preparing me for?" That shift in perspective is where purpose begins to shine through. Recognizing divine purpose also means understanding that destiny is not linear. The journey is rarely a straight line. It twists, turns, pauses, and stretches you in ways you did not expect. But even detours carry direction. Even delays carry instruction. Even painful transitions carry transformation. People often believe they are off track because their path doesn't look the way they imagined, but purpose is not tied to your timeline. Divine timing uses every experience to bring you into alignment with what was meant for you all along. There is no setback strong enough to erase what has been divinely assigned to your life. Another important layer in recognizing your purpose is letting go of the shame connected to your past. Shame keeps you small. Shame silences your inner voice. Shame convinces you that your history disqualifies you from stepping into something greater. But purpose calls you to release shame and embrace identity. You are not the same person who walked through those old battles. You are wiser, stronger, more aware, and more capable. What once hurt you now empowers you. What once held you back now becomes fuel. Purpose transforms pain into power and loss into learning. It allows your past to contribute to your strength instead of your suffering. Recognizing divine purpose means acknowledging that you carry something inside you that setbacks cannot destroy, whether others doubted you, circumstances challenged you, or fear tried to silence you. The purpose within you remains untouched. It may be buried under layers of self-doubt or disappointment, but it is still there, alive, powerful, and waiting to be activated. Purpose does not disappear because you feel unprepared. It does not leave because you made mistakes. It does not fade because other people walked away. Purpose is sustained not by external approval, but by divine intention. As you begin to embrace your purpose, you start seeing yourself differently. You no longer view your past as a prison, but as a foundation. You recognize that surviving hard seasons did not diminish you. It built you. You realize that the qualities needed for your calling were forged in times of pressure. You understand that every closed door protected you from something that could not carry you into your future. You begin to trust that the path you walked was not random but necessary. Recognizing purpose also requires courage. Courage to let go of old identities shaped by struggle. Courage to release the labels others placed on you. Courage to silence the voice of past failures. Courage to step into something bigger than what you once believed possible. Purpose calls you to rise higher, think bigger, and believe deeper. It calls you to make decisions not based on who you used to be, but on who you are becoming. This is where transformation begins, when your decisions align with your destiny rather than your history. Purpose begins to reshape your mindset. You start expecting growth instead of defeat. You start anticipating breakthrough instead of disappointment. You start believing that doors will open, that opportunities will rise, that your life carries divine momentum. This expectation shifts how you speak, how you act, and how you interpret challenges. Setbacks no longer feel like the end. They become signals that something greater is unfolding. When you truly recognize that divine purpose is stronger than past setbacks, you stop living from a place of survival and begin living from a place of calling. You stop rehearsing what went wrong and start preparing for what is right. You stop allowing fear to dictate your choices and begin walking with confidence, clarity, and conviction. You move forward knowing that what is within you is greater than anything behind you, and that your purpose is not just intact, it is unstoppable. Activating a renewed mindset that aligns with destiny begins with the realization that true transformation does not start in your environment, your relationships, or your circumstances. It starts in your mind. Your mindset is the internal engine that drives every decision, every habit, every interpretation of experience, and every response you give to life. When the mind is shaped by doubt, insecurity, or fear, the path ahead feels narrow and uncertain. But when the mind is renewed and aligned with destiny, clarity emerges, strength awakens, and direction becomes unmistakable. A renewed mindset is not simply positive thinking, it is a spiritual realignment. It is the internal shift that allows you to rise into the life you were always meant to live. Without this shift, destiny remains a concept rather than a reality. With it, destiny becomes accessible, powerful, and alive. A renewed mindset begins with letting go of the internal clutter that has accumulated over years-old beliefs, harmful assumptions, negative self-talk, and thought patterns that no longer serve your growth. These internal patterns often go unnoticed because they have become so familiar. They shape the way you process everything without ever being questioned. You may find yourself responding to opportunities with hesitation, interpreting challenges as threats, or viewing yourself through the lens of past limitation. These mental habits operate like programs running silently in the background, influencing your life even when you are unaware of them. A renewed mindset brings these patterns into the light. It reveals the thoughts that have held you back and invites you to replace them with a higher, more accurate understanding of who you are and what you are capable of. To activate a renewed mindset, you must first recognize that your thoughts are not fixed. They are not permanent. They are not immovable. They are shaped by repetition, environment, and experience. And because they were shaped, they can be reshaped. This realization is powerful because it breaks the illusion that the way you think today must be the way you think tomorrow. Renewing the mind requires intention. It requires the choice to reject thoughts that contradict your purpose and embrace thoughts that align with your identity and destiny. Each time you choose truth over limitation, you create a new mental pathway. Over time, these pathways strengthen until they become your natural way of thinking. A renewed mindset is fueled by awareness. Awareness allows you to separate yourself from the thoughts that do not belong to you. Many of the beliefs that limit you were formed in moments of fear or frustration. They were adopted subconsciously without your permission. Awareness gives you the power to step back and say, this thought is not aligned with who I am. This belief does not support my destiny. This mindset does not match the future I'm called to walk into. When you become aware, you stop reacting from old patterns and begin responding from truth. You stop accepting every thought as fact and start evaluating whether it deserves a place in your mind. As the mind becomes renewed, you begin to interpret life through a different lens. Challenges no longer feel like confirmations of inadequacy. Instead, they become reminders of your strength and opportunities for growth. Setbacks no longer create despair. They become signals that something is shifting and that you are being prepared for greater. You begin to view pressure as a shaping force rather than a punishment. This shift in perspective is one of the clearest signs that the mind is aligning with destiny. Destiny requires a mindset strong enough to withstand adversity and clear enough to recognize opportunity even in unfamiliar or uncomfortable situations. A renewed mindset also calls you into alignment with truth about your identity, your purpose, and your potential. When the mind is aligned with truth, fear loses power, doubt loses influence, confusion loses its voice. You begin speaking and thinking in agreement with who you were created to be. You stop focusing on your weaknesses and begin recognizing the gifts, strengths, and abilities that have always been inside you. You start to trust the divine guidance leading you, even when the path ahead is not fully revealed. This alignment is not based on emotion, but on conviction, deep, unwavering conviction that you are equipped for the journey ahead. Aligning the mind with destiny also requires discipline. A renewed mindset is strengthened through consistent practice, daily choices to speak life, redirect negative thoughts, cultivate gratitude, engage in reflection, and focus on what builds rather than what breaks. Discipline trains the mind to respond in alignment with purpose rather than in alignment with fear or instinct. It teaches the mind to choose clarity over confusion, courage over hesitation, and vision over doubt. As discipline grows, the mind becomes stable and grounded. Decisions become more intentional. Reactions become calmer and more purposeful. You develop mental stamina that allows you to endure challenges without losing your sense of direction. Another vital part of renewing the mind is elevating your expectations. People often limit themselves by expecting little from their future because their past did not give them a reason to hope. But destiny calls you to raise your expectations, to believe that greater is not only possible, but probable. A renewed mindset is one that anticipates growth, opportunity, breakthroughs, and divine alignment. It expects good things not because life has always been easy, but because purpose is stronger than pain. Elevated expectations shift what you attract, how you prepare, and how you respond to new doors. When you expect greatness, you begin to position yourself for it. You stop sabotaging opportunities and start stepping boldly into them. A renewed mindset also reshapes the way you speak. Your words begin to reflect the future rather than the past. You speak with confidence rather than doubt. You declare possibility rather than limitation. You affirm your identity instead of rehearsing your insecurity. The words you speak become seeds planted into your destiny. And over time, these seeds produce a harvest of strength and clarity. As your speech aligns with your renewed mindset, your environment begins to shift. People notice the change. Doors open that once appeared closed. You begin attracting connections, ideas, and opportunities that reflect your new way of thinking. Activating a renewed mindset also calls you to release the need to control every detail. Destiny unfolds one step at a time, and the mind often struggles when the full picture isn't visible. But renewal brings trust that each step is guided. Trust that timing is purposeful. Trust that even delays carry meaning. With a renewed mindset, uncertainty becomes less frightening. Instead of resisting transitions, you begin embracing them. Instead of fearing change, you begin recognizing it as a catalyst for elevation. Trust transforms the way you navigate life. It removes anxiety and replaces it with peace, clarity, and confidence. A renewed mindset also affects your relationships and environment. You begin gravitating toward people who support growth rather than those who reinforce limitation. You create space for voices that speak life into your destiny and distance yourself from influences that diminish your perspective. This shift is not born from arrogance, but from alignment. You understand that an environment built on fear, negativity, or stagnation cannot sustain a destiny built on purpose, strength, and spiritual clarity. Your renewed mindset draws you into environments that elevate your thinking and stretch your capacity. As this renewed mindset strengthens, you begin to see yourself through the lens of destiny. You see your value more clearly. You see your potential more confidently. You recognize the divine spark within you that refuses to be extinguished by hardship or delayed by challenges. You start making decisions that reflect where you are going, not where you have been. You embrace opportunities that once felt intimidating. You step into roles you once doubted you could fulfill. You rise into the fullness of who you are becoming. A renewed mindset is the internal confirmation that you are ready for the next level of your journey. It awakens parts of you that were once silent. It activates courage where fear once held residence. It strengthens your spiritual foundation. It empowers you to walk with purpose, clarity, and conviction. It aligns your inner world with the destiny that has been calling you, guiding you, and preparing you all along.